Hello and welcome to Anxiety Hacks. I'm your host, Kate Hudson-Hall, and thank you so much for listening. Now, I am an anxiety therapist and an author, and as we all know, and so many people at the moment, particularly in this day and age, are struggling with anxiety. And it seems to be so difficult for so many people, and hence why I wrote my new book called Anxiety Hacks, and why I started up this podcast to be able to help people and to be able to give them some sort of tools to be able to begin to work through those difficult, anxious behaviors, because it's so debilitating. It's really hard. And my new book, called Anxiety Hacks, is out now on Amazon. And in there are many, it's packed full of many different techniques and tools and different ways that you can begin to break through your difficult behaviors. And there's lots of different techniques, like I say in there. I teach the emotional freedom technique, which is tapping technique, which is an amazing technique to be able to help to reduce down any negative feelings that you have. I talk about, we work with visualizations and affirmations, and I explain about mindfulness and how powerful that is to be able to help you through your anxious behaviors. And it's packed full of all sorts of different information. So if you want to check that out, that is on Amazon. So if you just pop in Anxiety Hacks, you'll be able to find it there. Now we've got a beautiful guest today. Fabulous guest. Now her name is Stacie Boyar. Stacie is a licensed mental health counselor with a master's degree in education as well. She's in private practice, specializing in anxiety, depression, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Stacie also has a podcast called Namastacie, where she offers mental health tips. Stacie is also an author, and her book is called You're Not the Boss of Me, with tips, tricks, and tested techniques to tame the brain and keep anxiety away for those struggling with anxiety. So, Stacie, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey there, and thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
We've got a lot to unpack here. We want to hear all about you and how you help your clients with anxiety, and about your book, and so much to talk about. So tell us about how you ended up becoming a counselor.
Well, it was something I always wanted to do, but back 100 years ago, it was kind of something maybe that was almost frowned upon, or like taboo, to talk about going to counseling or even to be a therapist for some reason. So I went into education and was a teacher, and then had my own kids and was home with them. And I thought, you know what, they're going back to school now. I'm going to go back to school and do what I always really wanted to do, which was to go into counseling, mental health counseling, psychology. And that's exactly what I did. When my youngest daughter went to kindergarten, I went to school as well, and we did our homework together, and ultimately found myself in private practice years later. Then, of course, COVID hit, and I am now exclusively telehealth, which is interesting, but people seem to enjoy it and feel comfortable to.
What do you mean? Telehealth. What is that?
Telehealth is just counseling via Zoom. Actually, I use people doxing me, but
online.
So you can be online. So you could be in the comfort of your own home, car, wherever you are. And as you said, I specialize in anxiety, depression, and PTSD, where I do something called EMDR for PTSD.
Yes, I practice that as well. I love EMDR.
Yes.
I'm desensitization reprocessing. People
Yes,
that
yes.
don't know. Yeah.
Yes, and which is interesting because it's a similar tap. It's not like tapping that you discussed, but the tapping virtually is really helpful for people as well. Because in office, we would use the light or the fingers or the tappers that vibrate, but online, we have a special way to do EMDR, which is wonderful for so many people.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so that's
excellent.
mhm.
Excellent. So Stacie, if somebody came to see you that had anxiety, and they'd never had any help before, so how would you take that forward?
Okay, well, I would first explain that it is so common and so many people experience anxiety throughout their lives. Um, of course, there's all different types of anxiety. And then you had mentioned in the beginning all kinds of visualization techniques, meditation techniques, um, mindfulness techniques, which are wonderful. And also something called CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, which I practice a lot,
Yes.
as well as an eclectic version of all kinds of therapy, in which you challenge your own thoughts, because as we know, thoughts are not always true, and thoughts are not facts, and thoughts are subjective, and thoughts are based on ideas that may have been planted in your head by people that we don't even trust, right? So we
Mm.
now can have our own thoughts and question our own thoughts, and remind ourselves that there's evidence for those thoughts. So what I love most, of course, is practicing breathing techniques, because everyone breathes every day, but are we breathing correctly to calm the vagus nerve and really slow the heart rate and relax? So those are some of the things that I do.
And so how would you teach people with the breathing?
Well, it's funny when we breathe, especially when we're anxious, we breathe into our chest, those short,
Mm.
shallow breaths, which tend to make your heart beat even faster and make you feel even more stressed. And that's the wrong way to breathe. Breathing is really, as you know, to breathe in through your nose slowly and get it all the way down into your stomach, and puff out your stomach. Nobody's looking, nobody cares, and hold that breath in your stomach. And maybe at that point, tell yourself something calming or a mantra, and then blow it out as slowly as possible through pursed lips, slow, 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 and continue to do that to lower the heart rate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we should all be doing anyway. Because our lives are, it's like a roller coaster. So whenever we're feeling tense or whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be anxiety, does it? It's, using that breathing technique to be able to sort of kind of ground yourself, re-ground yourself and get yourself
Yes,
back
and I
to,
think you doing it when you're in a calm state might even be more important than when you're in
yeah,
an anxious state, because you could then draw upon it easier.
yeah,
Um,
because you're
you
going to get
know,
into the habit of practicing it. So then when you are in a difficult, anxious state, then you're much more likely to draw on that, aren't you?
yes, I think so, for sure. And I think there's all different ways that people can do breathing. If just saying it doesn't work, of course, there's the square breathing or the triangle breathing or the finger breathing. So there's so many that, you could do that would be right for you to help you to relax.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, good. So tell us about, so how else would you help your clients? How,
Yeah. Well, I love grounding techniques as well, like you had just mentioned, using your five senses also to get yourself back in the moment. Because, of course, when we're anxious, we're thinking of the future, the what ifs, what if. And when we tend to potentially be depressed, we're thinking of the past. Oh, I should have done this. And oh, if this would have happened. So, ideally, where happiness lies is in the present. So teaching people to use your five senses. So what are five things you can see right now, right in front of you, and name them? And what are four things you hear right where you are, and name them? And what are three things you smell? And what are two things you can touch and describe them? And what's one thing you can taste or want to taste? So engaging all of your senses to pull yourself back in, to regain less anxiety.
Yeah. 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 Excellent. And what other ways? I love to hear about all these different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking about things you've mentioned, like visualization, making
Oh,
a
yes, we like visualizing.
space. Yes, having a safe space for yourself. So, in this way, you can get to this beautiful, calming place wherever you are. So, you could be in the most stressful situation, but if you are clear on what your safe space is, getting yourself there. So, maybe your safe space is the beach. So, in a calm state, visualizing the beach, and it's your safe space, so you can make it as vibrant and as beautiful as you want. So the water is turquoise and the sand is cream and the trees are bright, bright green, and you hear the waves are just crashing and crashing. And maybe you have a fancy frozen drink in your hand or whatever it is to make you really feel that you're in that place. You're smelling the sea air. So this way, if you are wherever you are that gives you anxiety, perhaps it's an airplane or a boat or anything, you can close your eyes and get yourself to your safe space where you feel secure, happy, safe, calm, is one. Um, I'm
And
also
I think
thinking,
what's really, sorry, Stacie, I think what's really important when you do your visualization, it's really important that you need to be in that picture looking through your own eyes. Don't
yes,
you? So you're actually, imagining yourself actually being there in that situation so you can really get that grounding, calm feeling. And then,
yeah, and I
and
think
then you,
that's hard for some people probably
Mm,
to be able to do that, but you're
mm.
right, because and everyone's is personal to them. So yes, it has to be through your eyes and what you feel comfort in.
And then, so then what would you suggest they do with that? So they've got their visualization.
Well, I would say that, to again be there in a calm state, remind yourself of what you're seeing and what you're feeling, and do that often. So then when you are, say, I don't know, wherever you are, where you're feeling anxious, a doctor's office, let's say, you can close your eyes, do that breathing that we talked about, and then visualize your safe space. I mentioned a beach, it could be the mountains, it could be an amusement park, it could be whatever it is for you, and get yourself there. Remind yourself of the smell, remind yourself, oh, I'm tasting cotton candy, whatever it is that you love, to really immerse yourself in your safe space. Of
Yeah.
course, it has to be practiced, but it's
Yeah.
possible.
And that's such a good point, isn't it? So it's taking yourself there at least once or twice a day when you can. And once you get used to it, it doesn't take too long to take yourself there, but to get yourself in that calm state. So when you are feeling anxious or tense or whatever it may be, you can easier step into that image and then draw on those calm, relaxing feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many things, such as meditation, which I always recommend. And some people do, give you pushback. Oh, I can't meditate. I can't sit still. And I like to recommend movement meditation. So you don't have to be sitting what we think or laying down.
Sitting
Meditating.
cross-legged, holding your hands out.
Yes, which is great. But some people just are anxious even thinking about that.
Yeah.
So a nature meditation is something I like to recommend too, getting out in nature. And when you find your thoughts floating, okay, I'm going to bring it back to nature. I'm going to now focus on the tree that I'm walking past. And now I'm focusing on the leaves. And then when your thoughts start to go where you don't want them to go again, pull yourself back. Okay, I'm focusing on the clouds and what shape are they and what color are they. So a movement meditation sometimes works as well as
And
being still meditation.
yeah, and it's really important that when you are aware that your mind has wandered off, because sometimes we don't even realize that it's wandered off. But when you are aware that it's wandered off, it's being pleased with yourself because it's actually, you're practicing mindfulness or meditation correctly because you're bringing it back to that whatever it is you're focusing on your walk. But it's really important that you don't judge yourself and give yourself a difficult time, that it does keep wandering off, because that's what it does, because that's all our minds just will keep wandering around all the time. But
Yeah.
it's so beneficial, isn't it, to practice meditation and mindfulness, and the research they've done on how beneficial it is for anxiety, for the mind, is so unbelievably impressive.
And I love that you said that, because that's true. I think that's lots of times we do that. We berate ourselves or
Mm,
have the negative self-talk. Oh, I can't even meditate. I can't even do this right. Of course, that's incredibly not true. Like you said, you're doing it correctly. And be mindful of that negative self-talk. Are you talking to yourself like you would talk to your best friend? And why not? Are you being kind to yourself? Are you making yourself a safe space? And those are such important things to do to train our brains to be kind to ourselves, number one.
yeah, because we, like you say, for a lot of people, they are so harsh on themselves and they give themselves such a difficult time, and they wouldn't even speak to their best friends like the way they speak to themselves. And that's kind of, some of that is what's driving their negative behaviors. So it's starting to recognize and be aware that actually you don't need to listen to these negative thoughts that you have, do you, Stacie?
Yes, absolutely. And I know there's been studies that you really can refocus your neurons. So we're so easy to go to the negative, and that's just something people easily do. But with time and practice, you can veer more towards the positive. And I think maybe a way to do that is every time you notice yourself having a negative thought, don't berate yourself or be unkind to yourself. Add 3 positive things instead, or 2 positive things instead of that, to kind of reframe your mind. So whenever you notice something negative, you have to say something, at least 2 things positive to counteract that all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
it helps
absolutely.
to rewire
Because
the mind.
that's how we were created, wasn't it? With the negative thoughts, because we have approximately 60,000 different thoughts that go through our mind every day. And I think it's 80% of those thoughts that we have are negative thoughts,
Mm,
because that's how we've been created. It's how our forefathers were created to keep us safe, and protect ourselves from that saber-toothed tiger.
yes.
And so, but that's a pattern that's carried on. So if you have depression or anxiety, those negative thoughts, that percentage is going to be even higher. So it's having different ways that you can start to work with those difficult thoughts and recognizing them, and like you say, and then and turning them around and giving yourself some kindness and positivity.
Yes, and I love how you said that. So when we're feeling anxious, just made me think of this, or depressed, almost praising yourself for doing what you were supposed to do 1,000 years ago,
Yeah,
and then reframing it and changing it. It's almost being proud of yourself for thinking that way, but this isn't serving me anymore. This thought isn't helping me in any way, and I need to change it.
oh, I love that, Stacie. Absolutely, absolutely. And so, and giving yourself, say, 2 positive um, phrases that you can, to counteract that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think,
That's why affirmations are so good, isn't it, Stacie?
yes, absolutely. And I think, sometimes for people suffering with depression or anxiety, this is a tip I sometimes give people: waking up every morning with an affirmation or with a statement of gratitude. So before your feet even hit the ground in the morning, before you even brush your teeth, say something positive. Start your day in that direction. And I know there's also been studies that if you can say gratitude throughout the day, maybe in the middle of the day and before you go to bed at night, that kind of changes your outlook as well. So gratitude and positivity certainly helps.
Absolutely. And it's finding a specific and getting organized with your affirmations. Because an affirmation, for people that don't know, is a short, simple phrase that you repeat to yourself over and over again. So it's finding a specific affirmation of whatever it is that you maybe want to begin to change, a pattern or whatever it might be, and then repeating that phrase over and over and over and over and over again to yourself. So
Yes.
I say to my clients, well, we create an affirmation, and I'll say, okay, so I want you to repeat this 100 times a day. And most people's face drop and they're like, what? But if you were to break that down into blocks of 20, it's not going to take you very long at all. But one of the reasons for doing that, repeating it so many times, it's because it's working with that unconscious part of your mind, isn't it? And your unconscious mind is, well, why does she keep repeating that? Oh, this is the direction that she wants me to help her go in. So it's working with that part of your mind to help you with your goal of whatever it is you're focusing on.
Oh, I love that. And I think then it becomes almost second nature. If you say it
Mm.
that much, then it just becomes part of you, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
It also reminds me of, we had mentioned EMDR, and a section of that is you're thinking a negative I message. I am whatever it is negative. And part of EMDR is implanting that I message in a positive way and repeating that. So having a positive I message is really, really important.
Yeah. And it's starting to change the way that you're thinking, and they're coming at it from all directions, because there's so many different things that you can do to help yourself with anxiety, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's finding what works specifically, or what different things work for you to be able to help you.
And I think everybody has their own individual pretend toolbox, is what I call it. So you have
Yeah.
your toolbox, and when you're feeling that way, reach into that pretend toolbox and pull out what works for you.
Yes. Yeah. That's what my book is. It's based on a toolbox, and you have a toolbox, and it's finding what tools work for you throughout the book and then putting them in your toolbox so you can use it. And you know who else uses that phrase? Prince William. He did an interview. I have the I have the video on my website. And he's talking about, it was Mental Health Day a few months ago, and he was talking about it, and he was talking about everybody needs a toolbox so they can just reach into their toolbox and use it. And I was
They,
like, oh, this is
I
after my book came out. And I was like, see, it's
he
good
read your
enough for
book.
him. It's good enough for us.
Well, they've done so much to destigmatize mental health, putting it out there and stating that going to counseling is a wonderful thing, and working on your mental health is so important. They really kind of put it out there. So was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I did send him a copy of my first book, Bulimia Sucks. And
Did
then I
you?
sent him and in there, yeah, or did I send an email? No, in there, with the book, I sent a letter asking him to join me on the podcast so he could talk about his mother's experience with bulimia
Yes.
and how he feels about, the fact that she spoke out. But he hasn't got back to me yet about that. Maybe I should send him another letter.
Yes.
He's
Well,
probably
I
a little
would be
bit busy. A
listening.
bit busy after after the new book, his brother's new book that came out.
Oh, I'm sure. Very
A bit
busy.
too distressed. I need to send him my anxiety book. He needs that.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be listening for that. He'll be there. You put it out into the universe.
I know.
Just a matter of
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah. So him or Kate, I don't mind.
Mm.
And then I was thinking, when he didn't respond, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to find Harry's email, because that's when he just moved to the States. I'm going to find Harry's email. And I said to my brother about that. I did it. And then I said to my brother about it, and he was like, you sure that's a good idea? He's not too popular over here. I was
I
like, oh,
don't
I
think
didn't think about
they're
that.
really, yes, no, the two of them are not so popular over here either anymore.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
well.
But hopefully, hopefully in the future they'll all
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yes. Yes.
Not much hope of that at the moment, but hey, you never know. But even Harry talking about the difficulties he's had, which is really, amazing.
Yes.
And the help that he, that he has had, is speaking out about that is just huge.
And I think more famous people have come forward of late
Mm.
too, that they've dealt with depression or anxiety and gone to counseling. And I think that's wonderful to put it out there, to
Yeah.
make people know it's okay. And sometimes we need help.
Because
And
there's still that huge stigma for
yes.
many, many people about going to a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly over here, I think it's still very it's slow in the progression of opening up to therapy. It's a lot better than it was, but compared with the States, it's still, we've always been a little bit behind in that. You know, us English reserved, our feelings, eh?
Yes, yes. We're too out there. But and I always say the hardest thing is really to make that initial phone call, don't you think?
Yeah.
Getting the courage to just call is sometimes the hardest part of it.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. And it's interesting because I have an eating disorders client that reached out to me over this last couple of weeks via text. And we've been talking via text. So that's, that's another option to do that.
Absolutely. And I think that the younger
easier.
generation maybe is more comfortable with that. And that's okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is another option as well. That is slightly easier, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But that very first step is just, amazing to achieve that and do that.
And I also say sometimes a lot is the therapeutic relationship. So, maybe you reach out to someone and you don't feel that connection or you don't feel that comfortable. And that happens too. And that's okay. To find somebody else that you feel comfortable with. And maybe that person isn't good either, and then find somebody else. And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what happened with me. So I had an eating disorder for 15 years when I was in my late 20s, late teens. And then when I went to the doctor to go to see a psychiatrist, and that was very traumatic because this was in the 1800s, very long time ago. And especially in the UK, it was a real, somebody went to see a psychiatrist, really. It wasn't in a very good place. And so then they gave me on the NHS, the English medical, whatever you like to call it. I was sent to see a counsellor who was not very good for me. It wasn't a very good fit. And then I found a private counsellor, and that wasn't that. I stayed with her for a few months, but that still wasn't the right fit. But I persevered, and I went for a good few weeks with the first one, and the second one I was there for a few months, but it still wasn't the right fit. And then I eventually found a therapist that I was there with her for like 4 or 5 years. And when I sort of came out the other side, I remember looking back thinking, if I hadn't been with her, I don't think, because when I was seeing her, my mother died. And that was so traumatic for me. And I don't think that I would be here today if I hadn't had that therapist.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's why I trained to be a therapist.
So she or he was the one that kind of made you want to do what you do today?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because of the help that she gave me. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And
Because I don't think I would have been able to survive if I hadn't been seeing her.
wow. What
That's
a
how
wonderful
traumatic it was for me. Because I didn't have a father. He died when I was 2. So it was like a mother and father died
Oh,
really suddenly all at once,
oh my goodness. So we're so thankful for that person to be there for you.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Lovely she
I'm
was.
so glad that you are now on the other side and in talking into a microphone about it and helping others. That's just like really your calling, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we all go through difficult times and traumatic times in our lives. But that is why I trained to be a therapist, was because of her and the help that I had.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really special.
Yes. Yeah. So tell us about your book, Stacie.
Well, my book, it actually began as a podcast. And during COVID, my daughter went to sleepaway camp. I don't know if that's something you guys have over there, but it's common where I live. And she went to sleepaway camp during COVID. They were all tested, but they had to stay in their cabins. They had to stay in their bunks. They couldn't really do the usual fun things that they do. So they became very, very close with the 10 girls in their little bunk. And apparently somebody snuck in a phone and they started playing my podcast. And then about a year later, all the girls came to my house for a camp reunion, let's call it. And one of the little girls said, "Oh, I still listen to your podcast." And I said, "I didn't even know that you did." And she said, "Oh, it's helped me so much when I'm feeling anxious." And she said, "Even my mom listens to it." So after they left, I said to my daughter, "We need to maybe enable this to reach more people. Let's turn the podcast that gives tips about anxiety into a book." And that's what we did. So it's a book and it's a journal and it gives tons of tips and even, easy reminders for anxiety. So for example, sometimes we're feeling anxious, our heart's racing, and there are questions we can ask ourselves like, did we get enough sleep last night? Did we drink enough water? Are we eating healthy? So even focusing on the basics first before any of the other stuff. And then of course it offers tips, more in-depth visualization tips. So this is
You're
it.
not the boss of me.
And of course, you're not the boss of me is your own mind. You're not the boss of me. I have my own thoughts, and that's really important. So that's where that came.
Oh, fantastic, Stacie. So where can people find it?
It most easily on Amazon. So it's on Amazon. It's also online at Barnes and Noble and Books A Million. I'm not sure you have that there. And I think it's online at Walmart as well. But I always say Amazon's the easiest.
Yeah. Fabulous, especially because it's also a workbook as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It has journal entries, which, just getting back to anxiety quickly, journaling, and not for everyone, but for a lot of people, journaling and writing out your thoughts is a wonderful way to
so many people find that hugely helpful, journaling, and writing out those difficult thoughts then you can let them go.
Yes.
And if you don't think it's a very good idea, you could at least just try it once. You never know.
Absolutely.
It may work for you.
Yes, for sure.
So you work online. So how can people, Stacie, get hold of you?
Well, my website is Namastacie, NAMASTACIE.net. And let's see, Instagram, Namastacie_Boyar, BOYAR, are two great ways to get in touch with me.
Excellent. And we will have those details in the show notes below. And your podcast?
My podcast is also Namastacie, NAMASTACIE, with little prayer hands at the end. And that can be found wherever podcasts are found.
So on all the major platforms.
Yes.
Oh, we all need to go check that out. I love it. Oh, Stacie, thank you so much for all this invaluable information for people with anxiety to be able to help them.
Well, thank you so very much for having me.
Oh, no, it's been fun chatting with you. Thank you so much. Yay. And thank you to everybody for listening. And before we go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple iTunes or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode, and let us know what you think of your favorite podcast by sharing and leaving us a review. A positive review would be even better. So thank you to everybody for listening, and I look forward to chatting with you in the next episode.